But one of the things that Dr. King also focused on, and that is police violence and how it impacted African Americans. If you actually look at most of the race riots, not just in the 60s, but you go back even to the teens and the 20s and 30s, nearly every race riot in this country involved police abuse, police shootings. And what we are seeing right now is that they are not properly tracking these police-involved shootings. The Associated Press did and found more than 1,000 people have been killed in the last decade by various officers across the country. Now, there are differing perspectives on this. So the Washington Post has had an effort, you have the Associated Press and others, but Samuel Sinyangwe, he's the founder of Mapping Police Violence. He has been focusing on this for quite some time. We've had him on the show before. He joined us now from Los Angeles. Samuel, always good to see you. Take us through this, because here's what you find. And I ripped Candace Owens yesterday. I remember seeing some video and she was like, oh, there's this belief you have all of these shootings, and no, it's not that many. But it's a lot more complicated than that, because it's not just police-involved shootings where it's someone who's unarmed. It's also if somebody is armed, but they didn't actually draw a weapon or whatever. And part of the problem is that these police departments, they do not want to report this data so we can accurately understand what is going on in a country.
That's correct. And I mean, it's not like there isn't a data collection program now for them to report to either. So, I mean, the FBI created the use of force data collection program. It was first announced when it was still FBI Director Comey in 2015, 2016. 2019, they started collecting data. That program has been operational ever since. And so only about between 50 and 60% of the nation's law enforcement agencies really participate in that program. So the federal government has created a program to report data to, but many police agencies still refuse to disclose details about anybody that they have harmed or killed in that context. And then the FBI that gets that data has also refused to disclose much of the information that it has already received from those agencies. So there are levels to this. It's happening at the local level, but there's also a lack of transparency from the federal government as well.
Yeah, let me remind people, that bill, if I'm correct, was put forth by Congressman Bobby Scott. And Black Lives Matter applied a lot of pressure to get that bill signed into law.
Yeah, I mean, there have been multiple now. I mean, we're talking about the Deaths in Custody Reporting Act. We're talking about there are a number of programs now that are supposed to track cases where people are killed by the police, from the CDC, from the FBI, Bureau of Justice Statistics. I mean, we have multiple agencies that are supposed to track this, and none of them are able to comprehensively track the number of people killed by police. And then within that, they're not even sharing much of the data, the incomplete data that they've already received. So it's like a black box. It's very hard to really understand what, if anything, they really have, because they won't disclose it, which is why investigations like the AP's investigation, is why databases like Mapping Police Violence continue to be so important, because it becomes the only way in which we can actually get access to a comprehensive enough number of cases to really understand what's going on with regard to police deadly force.
So now, for folks who don't understand, does that law, is it mandatory or is it voluntary that they have to report?
So, for example, the FBI's data collection program is voluntary. Agencies can choose to report or not report to that program. And if you talk to folks actually who are administering the program, and I've talked to some folks there, they will tell you that they are trying to prioritize participation in the program. And a decision that they have made internally is that they don't want to share the data publicly on how many people, let's say, the Los Angeles Police Department has killed, or Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, or NYPD. The agencies that have already reported data to the program, they don't want to share agency-level data, holding an individual agency accountable for particular cases that they've reported, because they think that the agencies won't participate anymore in that voluntary program if they're actually held accountable.
And there you go, though, but it's voluntary. And again, what Congress could have done and what Congress should do is what they've done with other programs. Say, guess what? You don't participate in this, you don't get access to federal funds.
Absolutely. They should do that. And they could do that. They have chosen not to go that route. They've chosen to go the voluntary route. I think that's a mistake. And so, what they have built to date is not nothing, but they have made choices to collect data that is not comprehensive and then not to even share that data with the public for a basic level of transparency. So, I mean, that's the Biden administration, as much as it was the Trump administration before that. This is a problem that runs deep within the FBI and their basic understanding of their commitment to basic transparency about police use of force. Now, these are the same agencies collecting data on arrests, for example, from the same departments and sharing that data publicly. Is the same agency collecting crime data and talking about crime and sharing all this information about crime, but refusing to share basic information about police violence in that same context.
Questions from my panel. Joining me, of course, is Dr. Greg Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University. Reese Colbert, host of the Reese Colbert Show, Sirius XM Radio. She joins me from D.C. Lauren Victoria Burt joins me from Arlington, Virginia. Of course, she writes for Black Press USA. Lauren, you're first.
Sam, it's great to see you. Thank you for your work over the years. You've been fantastic. Can you talk more about the reporting requirement for the Death in Custody Act? Because there is a reporting requirement that has been ignored by the Biden administration, the Trump administration, and as you just said, it goes back and forth. But are you aware of the details of the reporting requirement for death in custody?
Yeah, so my understanding is that they have the ability to withhold some federal funding to agencies that don't participate in the program, and that they have never decided to actually use that enforcement power to penalize any agency for non-reporting.
Thank you.
Oh, I guess it's my turn. Samuel, thank you for the work that. Oh, I didn't hear Reese. Okay, my bad. Thank you for the work that you do. I'm curious if you're aware of any state or locality that is actually getting it right with reporting and then acting on the data that they're finding.
Yes. So in the absence of real federal leadership in this area, there have been a number of states that have stepped up and passed much more comprehensive and robust data collection programs around use of force. New Jersey is probably the best example. They had created a program where they have participation from about 95% of all the law enforcement agencies in the state. They report data on every use of force incident, not only those incidents that cause death or serious injury, but the full range of use of force. And so for each case in which somebody is killed by the police, there are as many as 200 or 300 additional use of force cases where people are harmed, hurt, injured, in some cases hospitalized, but not killed. And so what New Jersey does well is they require every police department and sheriff's department in the state to report to the AG's office in, I think it's like a 2-week turnaround time. So you're getting almost real-time reporting of data that is then published publicly on the state's website, including officer names, including individual case level information about each case in which somebody had force used against them, demographics, whether they were armed or unarmed. You have a host of information collected by New Jersey that is simply not collected by almost any other state. I mean, there are data collection programs emerging in other places. Most notably, California has a robust data collection around deadly force. There's a more expansive data collection around both deadly and what they call less lethal force. So that's force involving weapons like tasers and batons. New York State is now collecting data on those types of force. So it ranges, but I think New Jersey probably has the gold standard currently available in terms of a robust use of force data collection program that is transparent. They actually care about sharing those details with the public, and that data is being used. You mentioned, how are these databases being used? Well, I mean, that information is invaluable, and we're seeing states. Actually, California started using this early on when Kamala Harris was AG. They actually used their data collection program, which was operational years ago, to understand which are the cities and counties that had the highest rates of deadly force. And they named Bakersfield and Kern County as having those high rates. And on that basis, they actually initiated investigations of those departments, and they have ongoing reform agreements with those agencies from the state of California now as a result. So that's how you can use data to identify places that need interventions, put those places under consent decree, and begin to require them to change the way that they do business.
Greg Carr, I see you in that black and gold, Greg, so you're going to tell me later where you got that outfit. But go ahead and represent the Alphas. Your question to Samuel.
Got to do it. Actually, I got this in South Africa. I hadn't had it in going on a year. We got to do that, brother. You know, we got to represent the frat. Hey, and thank you, Sam. I'll echo what Lauren said for your ongoing work. Just looking at the AP report, and I know that obviously it's not nearly complete, far from it, but of the data that's been collected, they reported, the 20 largest cities that have that for which there's available data represent 16% of the deaths. Is there any, and I know it's risky maybe to ask this, but can you extrapolate anything in terms of regional hotspots or problems or areas where this is more of a problem than other places, realizing that the vast majority of these jurisdictions haven't reported anything?
Yeah, so I should say, like, we can already make those assessments about deadly force. And I say that because while the federal government has lagged behind in their responsibility to collect and make public this information, our work through Mapping Police Violence, we've been publishing this data every single year, and we track about 95% of the total number of people killed by police through police use of force in a given year through media reports. Now, what this AP investigation did that was an innovation in the methodology was they not only looked at media reports and information directly from law enforcement agencies, but they also filed requests to both state-level data collection programs and to county coroners and other sort of stakeholders in this ecosystem that also have information about deaths that the police may not have reported. And so through that process, they uncovered about 270, I think was the number they gave, 270 cases of people who were killed, not through a police shooting, but through other types of police use of force, a taser or restraint. 270 people over that decade time frame, about 27 people a year, about 27 people a year, who were not tracked in any of those databases. So they were not in any media reports. They were not provided publicly in any of the public use of force databases that were available. They were only discoverable by filing these requests to coroners, I think they said they filed 7,000 requests to different agencies across the country. There are about 3,000 different counties in the U.S. Each one of them has a county coroner. You have different state level, the state AG's offices that have their own databases and processes of investigating some of these cases that have data. So they did the hard work of going to each of these different agencies and getting cases that otherwise would never have seen the light of day, would not have been reported, still have not been reported in media articles, if not for this AP investigation. So that's the expansion of what we know, and why we know that there's still gaps in many cases where people are being killed that are not reported in the media. Therefore, they don't show up in our database or any other database that's trying to track this across the country.
All right, then, Samuel, if people want to look at the work that you do, where can they go?
So you can go to mappingpoliceviolence.us and see the database that we've constructed. You can also, through that database, see what the data looks like for each state, for each city and county. To answer the last question that was offered, I mean, there are places that have higher or lower rates of police violence. In particular, places in the Mountain West, Midwest, tend to have higher rates of police violence than other areas. Rural areas, county sheriffs tend to have higher rates than local police departments. And throughout all of that, we see the racial disparities where Black people are 3 times more likely to be killed than white people. So there's a complexity to this, but also there are some trends and overall dynamics that we can already report, and we're reporting that you can find at Mapping Police Violence.
All right, Samuel, we appreciate it, my brother. Thanks a lot.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media and investment. This next generation social app has already raised $10 million and has just opened a new round to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.